going to do something I've never done in a homily before. I'm going to quote Yogi Berra. And if you don't know who Yogi Berra is, he was known for funny sayings in baseball. And one of his famous sayings is, "It ain't over till it's over. It ain't over till it's over." You'll know why I'm quoting that. So we're in day 33 of our spiritual spring training. Today we're going to talk about it ain't over till it's over. August 5th, 2001, there was a baseball game between the Cleveland Indians and the Seattle Mariners. So the Seattle Mariners that year won 116 games. So that, if you don't know baseball, it's a lot. It's one of the highest win percentages ever. In the sixth inning, after 6 innings, it was 14-2, Seattle was winning. And it seemed like the game's over, right? Even the manager of the Indians took out 4 of his starters, kind of signaling he's raising the white flag, say, okay, this game is yours, I'm gonna let my starters rest. But what happened was, in the 7th inning, the Indians scored 3 runs. In the 8th inning, they scored 4 more runs. And in the 9th inning, they scored 5 more to tie the game 14-14. And in the 11th inning, the Indians, one of their least known players, broke his bat, got a base hit, and they won the game. And it tied the record for the biggest comeback in Major League Baseball history, down by 12 runs. I'm sure Yogi Berra would have been saying, "It ain't over till it's over." Think about that in relation to our gospel story today. So 3 things, right? The white flag, deeper belief, and new life. First, the white flag. So in this baseball story, it seemed like the manager was raising the white flag saying, we don't have a chance. We're 12 runs down going into the 7th inning. Let's just mail it in. What's happening in this gospel story, we know Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, who are siblings, great friends of Jesus, and they send a message to Jesus that Lazarus is gravely ill. And what does Jesus do? Does he go right away? No, he waits. Amazingly, he waits. And we can probably relate to that in our lives sometimes when you're crying out to God, when you're praying, and it seems like there's crickets, right? We hear nothing. I remember when my mom died at the age of 57, I had been begging God for a miracle, for a cure, and when she died, it was like, God, where are you? I'm sure we can relate to that in our own lives. And so Jesus waits, and then he heads to Bethany, was just a few miles outside of Jerusalem. And on the way there, who meets him but Martha? So what seems like Jesus is waving the white flag, right? But Jesus never raises a white flag. Jesus never says, okay, let's just give up, we've lost the game. It can seem like, if we read the news and look around us, that the devil is winning, right? It may seem like we're down 14-2 in the 7th inning and God is silent. But it ain't over till it's over. The second thing is deeper belief. When Jesus arrives in Bethany, how long has Lazarus been dead? But 4 days. So not only is the game seemingly over, but it's 4 days past the game being over. And Martha comes running to him, and what does she say? Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. In other words, it's like your fault that you didn't come. I know you have certain powers, and I know he wouldn't have died. And Jesus tells her, your brother will rise. You just see this calmness in Jesus. He's God, right? He knows what's going to happen. Your brother will rise. And she says, oh yeah, I know he'll rise on the last day. And Jesus says, no, you don't get it. I am. Remember those words? Last week we heard Jesus tell the man born blind, I am. 2 weeks ago we heard Jesus tell the woman at the well, I am. The burning bush, speaking to Moses, God says, I am. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. If you believe in me, even if you die, you will live forever. And we hear Martha's faith come alive. What does she say? I have come to believe that you are the Son of God, the one who is to come. And God wants to bring us from that place of, gosh, Lord, where are you, to, I don't understand this, but I trust you. I believe in you. Our faith life is this going from trusting in what I know and what I believe to getting to a place where I don't understand what's happening, but God, I trust in you. And we even hear when they take Jesus to the tomb, what does he do? He weeps. He loves Lazarus like a brother. And we see in his humanity. And I think Lazarus's death, even though it did happen, it's a true story, it also has a spiritual meaning. Lazarus's physical death is symbolic of our spiritual death. It's that place where when deep sin separates us from God. And what happens when we sin badly? I think God weeps. God says, you weren't made for that. You were made for union with me. You were made for greatness. And so what was happening in that Indians game against the Mariners? I think each time they scored a run, they're probably looking at each other in the dugout saying, is this possible? Are we really coming back in this game? And I think we do that in our spiritual lives as well, right? We look around and say, can the resurrection be true? Is it possible that even death is not the end? And God wants to bring us to that deeper faith. And then finally, the third thing is this new life. So Jesus goes to the tomb and he says, roll away the stone. And what does Martha say? She's still not fully there yet. She's like, he's been dead 4 days. There's going to be a stench. This is really going to smell bad. And John wants to show us that it wasn't like Lazarus died and maybe they mistakenly took him as dead. No, he was dead for 4 days. This stench is symbolic of how ugly and how much our sin smells. So think about this the next time you feel tempted to sin. Realize that this is not going to end well. Sin always ends in misery. Sin always leads us away from God. And God weeps over our sinfulness. And so Jesus tells Martha again, he's trying to raise her faith. Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? You got to believe in me. You have to trust in me, Martha, that even though this looks final, even though this looks like the game is over, and Jesus probably would speak grammatically correct, but Yogi Berra says, it ain't over till it's over. And so we hear this prayer of Jesus, and this is such an intimate place, Jesus speaking to the Father. And what does he say? Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd, he's doing this so that they can see that he's speaking to the Father. I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me. And then he says with authority, Lazarus, come out. And we've talked about this. Whatever Jesus says happens every time. We have to trust in his promises. And when Jesus says to us, when I'm in the confessional, this is often in my mind. When somebody comes in there with this deep sin, we think we're dead, that God can't forgive us. We're in this maybe stench of our sin. Jesus calls us by name and he says, come out. This isn't for you. You were made for union with me. And what does he then say? He says, untie him and let him go. Our sin binds us, right? Our sin ties our hands, if you will, where we feel like we can't do anything. But the mercy of God frees us and gives us new life. Untie him and let him go. And so my brothers and sisters, on this 5th Sunday of Lent, only 2 weeks until Easter, if you can believe that, it's right around the corner when we're going to celebrate the greatest comeback story ever. Think about what God did. God didn't raise a white flag. In fact, if you've read Father Ricardo's book called Rescued, he says the devil thought he was winning the game when Jesus died on the cross. But what God was doing was he was leading him into his lair, if you will, to show him the greatest comeback story ever. That through his death and resurrection, not only was sin conquered, but death itself. And so, yes, let us reflect on the words of the great Yogi Berra today, but in the context of Jesus' promises. It ain't over till it's over.